originally created. Today, I think it's close to like 7.5, somewhere between 7.5 and 8% of your salary goes into Social Security fund. Your employer matches that as well. If you had contributed to Social Security in the 1930s when it was first passed, it was like around 1% or something much smaller. You also have to think about how people live. Back then, the average age for a man, I think, was in his 50s, maybe 6. I don't even know. Whereas, like, I don't even know what it is for your generation. For mine, the average age is like 78 or 82. I mean, people live much longer. So it was a program, like, I guess what I'm getting at is a ton of people would pay Social Security and never actually receive it because they wouldn't live long enough. So that's kind of one of the things that's happened. It also was not necessarily created to be something like a pension fund. It was that we had such massive devastation in our economy and people couldn't necessarily take care of old people anymore. You know, we had a situation where, like, if my family had lost their job, we obviously couldn't take in my parents who were also living on the street, so we had a lot of old people who were really suffering. So Social Security was like a stopgap measure just to protect those people. Okay? It's a program that's funded the way this cartoon illustrates. So that says the generation Graft, and Graft means theft. So if you look, what are the generations doing to one another? Yeah, they're taking money. So it's not, once you have worked long enough, you'll start getting a statement from the Social Security Administration, and it will tell you this is how much money is in your account. It's not like there's this vault somewhere where money's sitting there under Sydney's number and it's just being held waiting for her. It's accounting. They keep track of it, and we know how much money is being paid under her number. And then once she reaches the age of eligibility, then theoretically she's going to be able to draw on that money. But also know that you guys at 17 and 18 are working. If you retire at 70 and were to take that money's going to have to be adjusted for inflation. You know, if you guys are making $10 an hour now and you're paying Social Security benefits, there wouldn't be enough money there in the future to support you because the dollar continues to lose its value. So we do that. There used to be a time where, like, for every person that was taking money out of Social Security, we had lots and lots of workers. But because people are living so much longer, that's what's creating the problem. It's not that we don't have a lot of young people. We have a lot of young people in this country, and we do have a lot of workers. We have a lot of immigration that's helping to support that. But people are living on Social Security for 30, sometimes 40 years, and that wasn't the original design. There are lots and lots of proposals. We're not going to look at that. There are lots and lots of proposals out there about what might we do to fix Social Security. So I'm using this. This is a poll where they just asked a group of people. The percentages are not important. I just like this because I think it helps you to illustrate, to kind of understand, well, what are the things we could do to remedy this problem? So let's kind of walk through them. The first one says eliminating the Social Security tax cap. Okay? Think back to when we talked about taxes. And I told you we had proportional taxes, regressive, and flat. Okay? Social Security technically is a flat tax. Every one of you that have a job, 7.5% of your salary goes into Social Security. Okay? But when you make it to, I believe it's $180,000, they stop taxing you. Because we're not going to pay Social Security to Bill Gates on all of his gajillions of earnings, or LeBron James, or whoever it is. We're going to pay you up to a certain amount, and then we're done. So we don't tax you beyond that. So somebody that makes $400,000 a year, they only pay Social Security for half of the year, and then they don't pay it anymore. So if you eliminated the cap, then you would bring in increased revenue. But who would that affect in our economy, obviously? Yeah, it would affect wealthy people more. Okay. All right. Another suggestion is you could eliminate Social Security benefits to anyone who we kind of like determine doesn't need it anymore. So you could say if you make it like a certain age and your earnings are significantly high enough, you know, you have like a pension and you have a 401k and you have this or you have that, well then we just wouldn't give you the benefit anymore. So we would determine who actually, we make it a needs-based or a means-tested program where we say if you have means, then we won't give it to you. Another option is raise the retirement age. And I mean, truth be told, I know that when I say 65 or 70, that just seems archaic to you. But the reality is, like when I look at my mom, who's in her early 60s, that's not what my grandma was like when she was in her 60s. My grandma was an old lady, but my mom's not an old lady. Like it's just people live longer now. We're different. We take different care of ourselves. People don't work as physically hard as they used to for the most part. So raise the retirement age and just expect people to work longer. You could just increase the tax. You know, you could say, well, we're taking 7.5%. Let's take 8.5%. So that would be an option as well. We hear a lot of talk about privatization. Privatization would mean that we would allow people to have choice. So instead of my 7.5% going into Social Security, I would get to decide where that's going to go. And I would have control of my investments, and we would remove the government from this process. The other thing that we talk about is, well, let's just reduce the benefits and let's pay people out less. So let's just, we're going to keep it going, but we're not going to give them as much anymore. Okay. Here's my question for you. Why have you not heard any of your presidential candidates or major congressional candidates talking about this, if this is such a big deal? It's such a what? No, keep going. Keep going. Can you see like how this is going to take somebody with a lot of guts to come up and fix this problem? Because if you do this, you're going to alienate people who are wealthy. If you do this, you're going to alienate people who are wealthy, and you may disincentivize people to save because they're going to be like, well, screw that then. I'm not going to save on my own anymore because the government then won't give me my benefits. You do this, you've got people that think they're supposed to be able to retire at a certain age, and now you're saying, well, they can't do that anymore. Nobody wants taxes. Nobody wants something reduced. And privatization is super risky because that's how you get there in the first place, because you can't always count on Americans to save because we're not a very savings-oriented country. So the reality is you're going to affect a large portion of potentially your voters, especially like you said in the video. Who cares the most about Social Security? Old people who are very likely to vote. Okay? So it's an issue. And to be honest with you, it is something that your generation is absolutely tasked with. It's something that will become an issue, and it is something that will have to be remedied and fixed. So that's kind of why I go over all this, is I want you to think about it, because you're going to have to make some decisions as voters about what's going to happen. Okay. Really quickly, you guys just give me a couple minutes. So the last part then is Medicare and Medicaid. So remember LBJ, he was president during the Great Society. We have had decades of poverty that has been based on racist policies in this country, and he believes people are entitled to basic medical care. Medicare and Medicaid are different. Which of them is for old people? Medicare. Medicaid is for people who live in poverty. Okay? When you look at this, I want you to kind of understand what we're expecting to happen in our country. So this is looking at projected costs for medical expenditures in our country. This has nothing to do with the Affordable Care Act, guys. This is Medicare and Medicaid, programs we've had since the 60s. So when you look right here, back in 2000, our medical expenditures as a percentage of what we produce in our country were under 4%. We're expecting by 2035 that that's going to be close up to 10% of our GDP. So 10% of every bit of productivity in our country is going to pay for old people's health care and people in poverty's health care, which means that those are government expenditures. So what's going to happen to those pieces of pie? Education's getting squeezed out, right? Because these are entitlement programs unless we make some kind of change to them. So, the idea about entitlements, right? So it's definitely something that's going to have to be considered and something that's going to have to be weighed up. And I know that I just made you feel so good about your futures, haven't I? I hate this, right? But I just feel like some obligation for you to really consider and think about this, because this is not the rhetoric. This is not fun media. This is not like, oh, let's talk about Medicare. We're not going to do that. But it's something that you as an educated voter really need to consider and talk about. Okay? Alrighty. we are finally through the budget. Woohoo! Okay, that does